Hello, good morning. Today our guest is Professor Sergio Pila, and we're going to be talking about boredom. Hello, Sergio. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Very excited to be talking to
I'm
you.
excited too. So, you recently published a paper in the Journal of Economic Psychology, and you were studying boredom. Sergio, are bored people likely to have lower incomes?
Mhm. Yes, so we just published together with Daniel Navarro, Jordi Quidbach, and Stefan Fathiser a paper in which we show that people with lower incomes report greater levels of boredom in their lives. So we used three data sets actually. One from Europeans, one from people from six lower and middle income countries, and then a third data set of people from the US. And we show that among all those data sets, we find a significant relationship between lower incomes and increased levels of boredom. So I would say that people with lower incomes are more likely to experience boredom in their everyday lives.
Sergio, some years ago, I was interested in the concept of boredom. Professors were studying the effects of boredom on personality. Some of them concluded that boredom can ignite creativity and innovation. So, a publication in Canada and other publications elsewhere were talking about boredom. There was even a book dedicated to the study of boredom studies. So, I find the idea of boredom to be quite interesting. So you have done a number of studies. You have published another paper on boredom. So what's your take on boredom?
Mhm.
Is it beneficial in any way? Your
Right.
personal take and your academic take, if you have one.
Uh-huh. Well, when we talk about, I think it's a very uh, public like debate, right? Whether like boredom or experiencing boredom is good or is it bad, and you see it a lot when it comes to like parenting choices, for example, right? There's a lot of debate on whether kids should have smartphones or not, and whether they should learn how to deal with boredom, right? So my take on that is probably like, or I have a similar take on boredom as I have on other emotions. Is that it has a evolutionary function, right? So like boredom basically signals us that what we are doing is not stimulating enough or is not rewarding enough, right? And that we need to look for alternatives. So in that sense, being able to experience boredom, it's is an advantage, right? Because it helps us from an evolutionary perspective, right? But probably like experiencing chronically, right? Being chronically bored probably signals that something is off either with our environment and the environment that we live in, or with the way we experience that environment, right? So yeah, when it comes to this debate of whether like boredom it's beneficial or not, I tend to be a bit agnostic and try to refrain from giving like a very concrete answer, because I think yeah, like being able to experience boredom definitely has some advantages. Experiencing it chronically probably signals that something is a bit off, right? And I
Sergio,
think uh-huh.
quick question. So if low income people suffer from boredom, what about high income people? Are rich people likely to be happy? Because in the beginning of your paper, you said that there's a link between money and well-being. Can money allow us to purchase better experiences? You start your paper along that line. So if your research is saying that low-income people are likely to suffer from boredom, the high-income people, are they less likely to suffer from boredom? And if so, are they also happier?
Uh-huh. So what we find is that the relationship between income and boredom satiates after a specific income threshold, right? So, and this is a bit similar to the literature that looks into like money and happiness, right? If you are a low income individual and you get some, or you start earning more, you're going to experience lower levels of boredom. You're going to experience lower or higher, greater levels of happiness, right? But this effect disappears after you've reached a certain threshold of income. So if you already have a large income to begin with, adding extra money is gonna have a very small, if even significant, impact on your boredom and your happiness. Right? Is a This is of course based on a literature that's a bit correlational, right? There are
Yes, that's how you
certain.
start with
Uh-huh.
your in your introduction. So you list people like OISHI. I know the person, but I don't want to mispronounce the person's name. Etal 2020 and Westgate. Also that author Oshi 2020. How do you pronounce this person's name?
Oishi,
Yeah,
Shigeki
Oishi.
Oishi.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that the a late academic he found that there's a relationship between income and well-being. His name was
Mhm.
Ed. Ed used to do a lot of those studies.
Yep.
Yeah, and
So.
the link between income and well-being, because some people say, okay, money doesn't buy happiness, but I don't agree with them. I've seen the literature. Money allows you to purchase better experiences, and poor people are not likely to be happy. How can you be happy when you don't have money to buy food?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and there are like at least like three, or I think the literature in like on like income and happiness has identified three main mechanisms. I think, right, um, that allows people to experience the or to spend their money in ways that would increase their happiness. Right. I think there is also a certain consensus that says that if money doesn't make you happy, it's because you're not spending it in the right way. Right. And they point at, for example, buying time, right? So like outsourcing tasks that we find boring or that we dislike doing. They point at the role of generosity, like using the money to help others brings happiness, right? And they point at this thing that you were mentioned of
Yes,
buying experiences, right?
we're on
So
the same page. If
yeah.
you use your money to buy time, you're going to be happier. Why should you waste your time farming if your
Mhm.
friend is an effective farmer? You can just outsource farming to your friend. So I was on social media recently and a lady was saying, I am teaching my daughter to engage in stereotypically masculine work. And I said, no, teach her to be efficient. She should outsource what she cannot do to other people. Don't say you're going to teach her to be a plumber because that's stereotypically masculine and you want her to be independent. You can encourage her to be independent, but at the same time, she should be efficient. I have no problem with outsourcing what I cannot do.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Right.
secondly, your second point about helping people, yes, it is said that kindness is contagious. Some people who have money are unhappy because they waste their money. They spend money on conspicuous consumption. They always want to buy something flippant, either a new phone or a new house. They just like to spend.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, I think one of the most robust effects on the literature, right, is the impact of generosity on happiness, right? So if you spend your money on like helping others and being generous to others, then that should definitely increase your happiness.
So, Sergio, as a wealthy professor, how do you spend your money? As a rich professor,
So professors in Spain are not as wealthy as in other places of the world, I would say. How do I spend my money? That's a very good question. So a chunk of that goes definitely to housing, right? Um, and yeah, I think that goes a lot. I do spend a sizable portion also on social stuff, like going out with friends, having dinner out with friends, and I think that's well, like again, like that's somewhat like healthy, I think. Um, and then I try to spend a little bit on what I call like psychologically like rich experiences once in a while, right? So I think the motivation for the income and boredom paper is like born on the Westgate and Oishi's paper on psychological richness. So basically that paper shows that, or argues that, there are three main components of well-being. One that has to do with how happy we are, one that has to do with how meaningful our lives or how meaningful we found our lives, right? And the third one that has to do with how interesting our lives are, how full of these perspective changing experiences, these moments of very intense adrenaline, a bit driven experiences we have in our life, right? So in my case, I also try to. I mean, I don't try, but I end up spending a bit also on these type of things. Call it like concerts, or call it hiking through the Pyrenees, which are close by, or other type of experiences that I think also.
Hold on. Let me pause this for a second.
Yeah, 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 definitely.
Yes. Hold on. Hello. Hello. Good afternoon. How are you doing? Yes. Yes. I'm great. How are you? My dear, yes, yes, because I love when my name is English. So I have no number of hobbies. I'm a phone volunteer. I am a writer. I like to podcast. I like to even to share information. So I was even today I was speaking to a professor in school in relation to conversation about boredom and income. So I love to be engaged all the time. But repeat what you just said? Okay. What type of work am I looking for? Amazing? Yes, yes, full time. Great. Yes, yes, because I explained in Glasgow and I love Glasgow City and I want to live in Glasgow because I wish to listen to crazy, so I want to go back to Glasgow as much as possible. Wait, just a minute. Yes, yes, I do. I have the right to work in the community. I do. I would you this way? Yes, yes, I know it's the big team. Great, and what's your name again? I have a great big when I was doing some research on myself. So when I meet together, I like to meet people. And fundraising, I was doing and things like I'm that type of person. You too, guys. Yes. Sorry about that. I am back.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
Yeah, so we were talking about happiness and you being a professor and the hiking and what you like to do. Do you remember the last thing that you said?
Right. So I think the last thing I said was, yeah, was basically those are the ways I spend my money, right? The, I would say, housing, social things, and also like this psychologically, or
Yeah,
like a bit
yes,
more
yes.
psychologically rich experiences.
Yeah, for me personally, uh,
Mhm.
some of my interests are quite weird. I like to meet random people every now and then. I don't like weddings, but I will go to funerals
Uh-huh.
because funerals are philosophical, so I would even go to a random one and listen to the person's story, his or her life, and I make a note in my head. And I like to analyze cartoons because cartoons have greater scope for philosophical explorations. There's only so much that you can do with a show, but a cartoon is unrealistic. So the cartoon gives philosophy more latitude to play out itself. And I
Nice.
love I love reading. Do you read academic journals for fun?
I do. I do.
No, I
Well,
do all the time. No, like seriously, I do all the time. So I will go to
uh-huh.
Science Direct and read Journal of Economic Psychology, Intelligence, Journal of Comparative Economics. I just love my journals.
Mhm, mhm. Like I wouldn't say that I do it for fun, right? I do it because it's also part of my job, but I find it entertaining. I
Yes,
think,
psychological science, Journal of Personality. You should do it for fun. Like it's a part of your job. So maybe you don't want to see it as fun, but it is fun. Reading
yeah, it
research
is.
is fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely. And sometimes it helps you. There, like once in a while, you come up, you find one of these like papers that just get stuck in your head, and that it shifts a bit the way that you see things, right? So it's definitely like an interesting experience.
Especially the research on risk preferences. I know you have written on risk preferences, and we'll talk about that later. But back to your research on income and
Mhm.
boredom. Boredom is considered to be a negative emotion because bored people are antisocial. They engage in risky activity, and risk can be calculated. Where risky activities are less calculated, bored people can be a bit unhinged. So some argue that people who are bored are also likely to be dysfunctional. What has this paper shown? Is boredom related to negative emotions?
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Right. So we in the, when it comes to this like a specific paper, the paper that we published in the Journal of Economic Psychology, what we show is that boredom or that low income individuals not only experience boredom more often, but that the experience of boredom for these individuals is more closely linked to other negative emotions. Right. So as you said, boredom is a negatively balanced emotion. It's an aversive feeling, right? And so when it comes to its relationship to other negative states, seems to be more closely linked to like sadness or like loneliness for low income individuals than for high income individuals. I think that's one of the main takes of the paper, right? Now, what implications does it has when it comes to the literature on boredom and antisocial behaviors? I think that's a bit more tricky, right? Because that way we're making a connection between two different effects, and so I wouldn't dwell too much on that. But it is true that boredom seems to be linked to some antisocial behaviors, right? I think there is a very cool paper by my co-author and friend Stefan Fathaisa, who that shows that bored individuals engage in more sadistic behaviors. There is also some related evidence that suggests that, for example, boredom might be a factor behind bullying at the schools. Also, Stefan, I think, is the co-author on that paper. And so there seems to be some evidence that points at that link between boredom and antisocial behaviors, right? Um, but I don't think it's I find it or I see it as a different thing than the results that we presented in our paper. I wouldn't try to make a link between income and prosociality or antisocial sociality based on boredom. I think that would be.
Well,
Mhm.
Sergio,
Uh-huh.
probably the trait that's not being measured in some of these studies, and probably I have read a study, but I don't remember. But I'm online, and this show is quite interactive. And
Uh-huh.
okay, so this show is based on real life. It is
Uh-huh.
planned, it is professional, but at the same time, if you have children and you need to go and talk to your children, or if your son runs into the room, I won't edit it because that's just real life.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's just just real life things. Crazy stuff will happen in real life. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes they are not funny. But I think that boredom could also be associated with cognition, your cognitive state, and your human capital state, because cognition can influence well-being. There's this Professor Harrison J. Kell. So people often say that bright people, geniuses, their careers are more dysfunctional. But Harrison had a paper showing that if you're really smart, you not only achieve more in your career, but you're also happier. So if
Mhm.
you're a smart person, your mind is more engaged, it works effectively. So that might be diminishing the propensity for boredom.
Right, right. So I don't know of any literature looking at the relationship between cognitive ability and boredom. My guess is that um, boredom should be an emotion that is should be um, fairly easy to deal with, right? Compared to other a bit more um, negative emotions, right? So if we look at what makes us sad, in most cases, it's going to be things that are a bit more complex to solve than what makes us bored, right? So if you think of the problems in your life that make you sad, they tend to be a bit more complex than the things that just make us bored. And so because it might be more easily targetable through emotion regulation strategies, I think it might be there might be a stronger relationship between cognitive abilities and boredom. But I haven't read anything on that, and I'm not an expert on that, right? So I'm an economist, not a psychologist. So if you talk to a psychologist, maybe they had a completely different intuition, or they know better the literature
Well, I,
on
I've not seen a
and
paper
boredom.
on the link between boredom and IQ either, but
Uh-huh.
that's how this shows. That's how this show works. I ask professors questions, expecting
Mhm.
them to answer because they have expertise in a particular area. So I won't ask you a question about cognitive science and spirituality because that's not your expertise based on what I
Uh-huh.
have seen. But if we're having a conversation, we are free to give a logical opinion on the matter.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
one
yeah,
that's
yeah.
definitive, but one that is logical.
Mhm.
Many geniuses make groundbreaking achievements in outside professions. So look at Charles Darwin, what he studied versus what he achieved. Sometimes the best innovation comes from outside. I like you're an economist, and that's why you should also study psychology. I think economists they do some of the most interesting work.
Mm.
Yeah, economists are different from other scholars. The nature of their work, yeah, but the nature of their work forces them to be dry, and
Uh-huh.
I appreciate that. So when I'm doing an interview, I try to be chatty and to be funny because people like that. But
Yeah.
in reality, I am not really emotional. I wouldn't say that I'm a dry person, but I'm not moved by emotions and sentiment.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, no, but it's true that the if you read an econ paper, the style tends to be a bit more concise or than in other, I think, social sciences. That's
Yes.
definitely true.
Question, because I want the data analysis process to be simpler for our listeners. But how
Mhm.
did you collect and measure the data?
So how did I?
Okay, how did you collect and measure the data? How did you do the statistics? Because my listeners they like these deep questions.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So the for the specific paper on income and boredom, we use the publicly available data sets, right? So these are large. Some of them are like state run surveys. These are large surveys from public from public organizations. and so we use this like freely available data, and then the methods are very simple. We simply run a set of linear regressions using OLS and like clustered and robust standard errors, and that's it. It's a correlation on paper, right? So the methods are quite simple, actually.
Or could we not talk about this loneliness? Are bored people also likely to feel loneliness?
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So boredom and loneliness are very like they do overlap quite often, right? If you think of what does it mean to be bored, then like it usually happens when we are alone, right? Social interactions tend to mitigate our sense of boredom. Right. And also the other way around, right? Probably we are more aware of our own loneliness when we are bored than when we are busy with other things, right? And when our attention is focused on other stuff. So what does yeah, I think a very interesting question for further research is to see or to check what is the overlap between these two emotional constructs in like everyday life, right? Maybe through experience sampling methodologies or things like that. Because I think it's a like even like an empirical question, right? How often do we experience boredom when we are alone versus when we are not alone? And also, what is you know there is a growing literature that points at this loneliness epidemic, right? In a specific cultural context. So also
Yes,
understand the relationship between boredom and this loneliness epidemic. I think it's quite important.
that's a controversial opinion.
Uh-huh.
Loneliness, because I was reading an article in the
Mhm.
conversation recently, and the researcher was overturning the notion of youth loneliness. He was saying that this generation is not unusually lonely.
Right, right, uh, right. But then,
But he's the only one saying so. Everybody else is saying that loneliness is a problem, but he's the only one saying so.
uh-huh, uh-huh. So I haven't seen like the specific data or the specific reference that that person. Yeah. Again, I'm not an expert on loneliness, but my take would be that one needs to separate between aloneness and loneliness, right? Being alone, I think it's an objective thing. You're either with somebody in the same room, in the same place, or you're not, right? Um, but being lonely is a subjective feeling, right? You can feel lonely while you are surrounded by people.
Yes, this
Um,
person name
uh,
is Brendan Kelly. He's a professor of psychiatry, Trinity College Dublin, and he
uh,
writes, "There is no loneliness epidemic. So why do we keep talking as if there is?" Several studies showed that rates of loneliness were stable in England, the US, Finland, Sweden, and Germany before COVID.
mm. And it could be.
Yeah.
As I say, I'm not
Maybe
a.
both of us, maybe we should read him in more detail.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
So, but loneliness is a concept that some people don't understand. There are times when you need to be alone because when you're alone, you get to think and you also get to reevaluate yourself. And there are times when you should also experience real loneliness. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely, but experiencing real loneliness can be beneficial. Because if you don't experience real loneliness, you are never going to be in a position to judge other people. Yeah, sometimes you have to be lonely to know the people in your life who are really valuable.
Right. I'm not sure.
You're not sure what I'm saying, so let me explain to you. It's like saying you only know your friends when you're broke. That's what I'm saying. So there are times when you're in a certain state and you might feel lonely, and the only people who are going to be around you are people who care about you. And sometimes people need to be in a position where they experience true loneliness, because experiencing true loneliness can say, maybe it's time for me to restructure my friend group. You
Right.
get what I'm saying? No,
Right.
because
No. So
if you
I
have a
get
strong
your
support
argument.
group, exactly. So sometimes you have to feel loneliness as a serious emotion to know the people who really matter.
Right. But I think that that depends on the person, right?
Yeah, on the
That's
person, on the
that,
person.
like for some people might have like a positive impact, right? In terms of like reshaping your social network. For other individuals, it might not, right? Might not be a motivator.
Yes, yes, it all depends on the psychological prowess of the individual. For some
Uh-huh.
person, it might lead to great anxiety and more negative feeling and to psychosis
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
their sense of self-worth is lower. So I completely get what you're saying.
Mhm. Mhm.
But for me, as a person, I am more likely to be alone than to be lonely, and I'm quite reflective. What about you?
Right. So yeah, I don't usually feel lonely that much, but also yeah, I'm also a person that tends to like enjoy a bit having a space, right? So having some alone time once in a while. I think it just helps me like focus, like especially if I have to work and stuff like that, knowing that I have my schedule a bit free, and I don't have too many people around. Otherwise, I get distracted very easily as well.
Okay,
So.
I don't get distracted easily. Personally, I care about my happiness and well-being, and do you know what makes me happy? Reading
Uh-huh.
interesting studies.
Nice,
So
nice.
if you are alone, you will have more time to write, and I'll
Mhm.
have more time to review and to write my own articles because I get insight from interesting studies. So I don't want you to be around people all the time, but I do want you to. Do you have children?
I don't. I don't.
Okay, but I do want you to have children. I think productive people should have kids. No, seriously, like I like it when people create a factory. So you're a psychologist and your son becomes a psychologist or somebody famous or better. I like that.
Mhm, mhm.
And that's something that's I'm really distressed by the trend of professors not having grandchildren. You're still relatively young, but I've interviewed many distinguished professors who are really old and they have no grandchildren. That's something that really disturbs me. No, no,
Oh,
whatsoever. Or they have maybe children, but they might have maybe one or two, but really have no young person in their generation. Their siblings don't have kids, don't have grand or great grandchildren either.
I don't know. I think in the grand scheme of things, right? I don't think it's that much of an issue, right? But that's just my take, and also concerning the state of the climate and the the environmental footprint that
Oh, so you're one of those. So okay. There are many people like that who are not having children because of the climate. Well, you're a researcher, but you do know that extreme climate activism is associated with mental instability.
uh-huh, uh-huh,
Many of those people who are not having children because of the climate are also mad.
uh-huh. Well,
They are mentally unstable.
I wouldn't say that, right? I'm not. I don't know the literature behind that, but I think that sounds a bit extreme. I think.
Yeah. So many, some of them, they're quite unstable because there's little any of us can really do to solve any of the grand problems of life, whether it be the state of the financial system or failing education, which is becoming a problem everywhere. There's very little we can do as individuals to avert those problems or avert them from escalating. So
Mhm.
personally, I focus on being as productive and as effective as possible.
Mm.
I'm rule oriented. So if the rule is logical, I try to comply with it. But I don't waste time thinking too much about problems that are out of my control.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's a good strategy.
Yeah,
It's
like there's
definitely good.
nothing you. I don't have an issue with billionaires, and there's nothing you can really do to prevent people from becoming billionaires. There's nothing you can. The climate will always change. As an individual, you can manage your environment, but there's nothing you can really do to stop other people from doing what they want to do. Yeah, so I don't have that puritanical mindset. I just do me and follow the rules the
Mm.
necessary rules. That's all.
Mhm.
Yeah, like we live in a time where if you're not able to ignore people, you're going to become unhappy.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, so like when I'm on do you use social? Are you on Twitter?
I was so I'm
Bluesky
on
now?
Blue
Are you
Sky
on
now.
Bluesky now?
Yeah.
Okay. So like when I'm on Twitter, I spend a lot of time muting people. So if you mention somebody like Candace Owens, that's an automatic mute for me. Like I just
Uh-huh.
spend a lot of time muting. Like, if I don't like, if I think you're stupid, I mute you. I'm not interested in talking about people because they have a million followers,
Uh-huh.
and I'm happy. Like you don't need to talk to waste your time on everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it. I
Yeah,
think
it's
that's
not, but it's quite easy. I don't know why are like people are complaining about Twitter, and I'm like, guys or girls, you can just mute them. You really can just mute them.
right, but then you have to spend a lot of time just muting people,
Yeah,
right?
that's not. There's sometimes I'm like that. I'm just muting everybody because they're stupid. No, why should I mu- entertain somebody who is on, like, I'm not a feminist, but why should I entertain somebody who is online saying I don't have to listen to women because they are multi bitches? I am not interested in that particular guy. I just muted him, and if you mention him, I just mute you.
Right, right, right. But if you're in a like social network where like those ideas are put forth on and on, right? At some point, it's just too like time consuming to be like blocking everyone all the time.
Yes, so yeah,
And it's
so
just easier to make the switch, right, to another platform.
yeah, so you have to learn how to curate
Hmm.
your timeline. So interestingly for me, the people who pop in my timeline are usually people who are citing your study. So somebody might say, look at this cool study from Sergio. Those are the people
Hmm.
who pop up in my timeline.
Hmm. Nice,
But back
nice.
to your research, you did a paper. Before we talk about that paper, white collar and blue collar occupation. What did you find?
Right. So we, if yeah, so we found that the like boredom were most prevalent among blue collar occupations, right? We also found that the relationship between income and boredom was also stronger for people that was on social insurance programs. So especially people that are unemployed. So if you don't have a job, then you not only experience boredom more often, but then your income, with your household income, right, also shapes more how bored you're gonna be. I think those are a bit the secondary results of the paper. Right?
Well, a number of countries were examined in the paper. Did you notice anything peculiar about any particular country?
Right. So there was one specific European country, I believe, but I can't remember which one was, for which the relationship kind of flipped, right? For which higher income predicted higher levels of boredom. But this was just one out of the 25 countries in our European data set. And so it could be just that we got that result just out of chance, right? Out of random sampling or like sampling variability. Um,
Sampling what? Sampling
yeah,
variability?
Yeah, just out of luck, right? If you test something 25 times, and we had like 25 countries, then it could be just by chance that you find the opposite effect, right? So that was one thing. The second thing that I think it was interesting when like looking at countries is that the relationship between income and boredom was stronger for low and middle income countries, right? So I think that was quite interesting. I don't know. We don't know the mechanisms, so we don't know exactly why is that.
All right.
Um, but so if you have any idea on why that could be, I'll be happy to listen it. Uh, but I thought that was quite interesting as well.
Now we're going to talk briefly about another paper you published, boredom and risk preferences. You said that bored people were not more likely to engage in risky activities, which is
Uh-huh.
unusual. How did you arrive at that finding? That's an unusual finding.
Right, it is, right? Because there is quite a bit of literature in psychology that shows that people that are bored are more likely to engage in different risky behaviors, right? Things like drunk driving, things like risky sexual behaviors, um, yeah, all these risky health behaviors as well. So all these type of behaviors have been linked to boredom previously, right? So we just try to learn whether it also, or we would also find a similar effect when we focused on the domain of economic preferences. So when it comes to people spending their money, right? And so we just ran a set of, I think it was like 4 studies, and we simply divided people randomly into a boredom group and a control group. We present people with like different boredom manipulations. So, for example, we present people with, or we divided people in groups, and one group had to watch the video of a stone, and one video had like a more entertaining type of video. And then we present them with the typical risk elicitation tasks that we employ in economics, right? And basically, what we find is that there is no significant differences between the boredom condition and the control condition. So what we conclude is that in the domain of economic preferences, boredom doesn't seem to impact our decisions to take risks. This goes a bit in line with some other evidence that suggests that incidental emotions have relatively little impact on people's economic choices. So when it seems that when we present people with standard economic tasks, our emotions, or we tend to leave aside our emotions when we have to deal with money. We try to be a bit more cold minded in those specific settings. There's
That's
also,
logical.
uh,
That's logical. When you're dealing with money, you have to be serious.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And we find a similar result in a recent paper that was, it was a collaboration led by Tekla Boysen Muller. I don't know if I pronounced her second name correctly, Boysen Muller. Um, but Tekla is a very smart. She just finished her PhD, and she made this registered report that was published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology. She designed this very neat experiment to test whether boredom impacted economic social preferences, right? So whether people that are bored are more likely to share money with others, or or to subtract money from others. And she designed this online experiment, recruited thousands of people. I think it was close to 4,000 people. And after analyzing the data, we find again that there was no differences in generosity between groups, right? So there seems to be a common theme here in what respects to boredom and choices that had to do with money. I think people have, when we face a choice, we have different incentives, right? And some incentives are monetary and some incentives are emotional. I think sometimes when we have monetary incentives, we try to put our emotional incentives out of the picture and just focus on the money. And
All
so
right.
that could explain why we find no results, both in when it comes to risk preferences, but also when it comes to social preferences or economic social preferences.
All right. So we had a good conversation. Thanks for coming on, and I am sure that you really enjoyed this conversation because both of us were able to talk. Somebody told me once that usually when you do an interview, the interviewer can contribute to the conversation, and I know that I am not that type of interviewer.
No, it was great. It was great talking to you.
All right. Thanks and bye. All right.
Bye. Bye.